Okay, so hello everybody. We are through with the content of the lecture, and now I will do the last date with you together. Some tasks which will look like what you have to do in your little term paper, and especially we start with a task you find. Oh, I have to open the other one because there the license is missing. And the English version, let's copy this. So, what you have to do within this task is at first you should download some data from the database of the International Monetary Fund. This we will do together, and then here you see. Then you should download the GDP at current prices, so nominal GDP, real GDP, inflation rates, population data, and then start to manipulate these data, calculating over the last 15 years average growth rates of population, of the inflation rate, of GDP growth, and so on. So what we have mainly done within the lecture, but there that I can, so to speak, directly do the calculations by hand. Then we had, I think, periods from 2 to 3 years or 4 years or something like this. But of course, in practice, you want to have a picture what was the development of some country over the last 10, 15 years for longer periods, or go to your business administration courses. Then you are interested in the development of your enterprise, of the revenues, of the profits, of the costs of your enterprise over the last 5, 10 years. And therefore, I will do this with you together. Okay, so the first one would be then download this data, and hopefully this functions that I can click on this. Well, then I have to choose the world file. Otherwise, you can, of course, just copy the internet address and paste it into a browser. But the link should be active also in the PDF file. Have you tried it? It works. It works because here, I don't know, in the German lecture, it takes a minute until he opens the browser. So let's wait just this minute. I don't know why. Yeah, this is another task. We will see if we can have time to do it. Otherwise, we will do it next week. So still waiting. I don't know what the hard-end software here is doing. There it is. Great. So this is the database of the International Monetary Fund. And especially here you have the World Economic Outlook. And there is the database for roughly 190 countries in the world. And then in a minute we will choose one country, but I want just to show it to you here. Then you see here you have real GDP, you have nominal GDP, you have GDP per capita, purchasing power parity we didn't have done in our lecture. this is something else. Inflation rates, population, unemployment, and current account, and also some measures of the government expenditure, so government debt, government lending, and yeah, so some aggregated macroeconomic variables. And what we shall do in the first task is use the nominal gross domestic product data, GDP at current prices in billion US dollars from the IMF data mapper for your country. And we will choose the country Australia. And then in your term paper, I will give you some specific country. It could be any country. It can be any country. It can be Angola. It can be Korea. It can be Japan. I don't know. You will get it by random. So now we want to choose Australia, and what we shall do is calculate mathematically exactly the annual average nominal economic growth from the nominal GDP starting at 2008 to 2022, and you shall compare this if you choose a little other period from 2009 to 2019, and then you should compare your outcome. You should a little interpret what you are seeing. And this is one task is just from your raw data, what you see, and also then what I want to see is that you read a little bit, not much. Just read a little bit about your country, because maybe also within this period there is some some interesting. I don't know, because I don't know the economic performance of Angola during the last 15 years. And then you should give an answer not more than half a page, maybe 3-4 points about this development then. Yeah. Okay, but the first step is the technical one. We want taking the data, calculating the average growth rate. Okay, so then where we are, here we are. So GDP at current prices, this would be this here. So clicking on this, then the data set opens. Here we can choose Australia. Oops, too far. There we are. And then here you see in the diagram the development of the data, but you also see that he has automatically chosen also the aggregate of all emerging markets. Let's delete this, the advanced economies and the world overall. And now we are left with Australian data. Of course, now you have only the diagram, and therefore we want to download it. And down here you see select country data. Clicking on this will download the data. I don't know how you have it in your browser. Maybe you are asked where should I download it. In my browser it's automatically downloaded. But I think you know how to download data from the internet. So I open the data and here we have it. Oops, let's move it. Let you see it here. GDP at current prices, billion US dollars. So please also check that you have downloaded the right data. And this one we now want to take in my own Excel file. And well, it's up to you. Here you have it horizontally provided. You can use it to do your calculation horizontally. I always do it in a vertical row because I think that then you can more easy look at the data. So I change now the format of the data, choosing values, and here to transpose the data. So then this changes it from the horizontal representation to the vertical representation. So this sheet, then I name just the data sheet and task A. Let's go. What I want from you. I want from you from 2008 to 2022 and 2009 to 2090. So for this, I copy starting from 2008 to 2022. Again, GDP nominal and we had billion US dollar. So, since we want to have the average growth rate, we of course also need the annual growth rates. Annual growth, about this we have talked a lot in the lecture, is the absolute change from one year to the other year divided by the starting value. So the growth rate would be then 1,000, 1,000 minus 1,056 divided by 1,056. This is the growth rate of the year 2009. This we have to do for every year. So I downward copy this and since it is a little bit nicer, I choose the representation in percentage. So what do I have now analytically to do when I want to have the average growth rate from 2008 to 2022? How do I do this? Pardon? The average growth rate from this period, from 2008 to 2022. I have the single growth rates and now I want, and please be careful, I want to have it mathematically exact. So you have to know how do I average growth rates. No, you have growth rates. And growth rates have to be averaged via the geometric mean and not the arithmetic mean. Yeah? We have really talked a lot about this in this lecture. Yeah? Pardon? The transposing the data? Okay, so again, this one, copying, and then right click with the mouse, content, value, And here, this is the important one, transpons. But I have recorded it. You can also look it up later on. Okay. So, and for this, we need the growth factors. So the growth factors are just 1 plus the growth rates. So is 1 plus the growth rates. Well, of course, it is not very nice to represent growth factors in percentage. Therefore, I rechange the format to numbers. And then we have the growth factors. Growth factor is 1 plus growth rate. Yep. And then you have to average geometrically the growth factors for this. And I will do it in different ways. But of course, this is some software package and you do it quite often. Therefore, you have a direct formula. And this direct formula, very surprisingly, is, oops, why is it this one? Is called geometric mean. Then I can read in my data and pressing enter, and then I obtain the averaged growth factor. Okay, but I also know this is just the average, the geometric average of these numbers, so I can also directly calculate it. So I have to multiply all these numbers. This means I have to take the product. And for this, I also have a function which is called product. Product of all these numbers. And then by definition, I have to take the nth root or the root of the length of my period. Remember this? When we have averaged 3 years, we took just the root. So the second root of two numbers. So exponent to the power of 1 over 2022 minus 2008. And hopefully this will be the same number. I'm lucky. Pardon? The root is here to the power of. I think on the left, on the upper left side, yeah. The hat is the sign for taking the power. Okay, or what can you also do? Well, the thought experiment behind averaging a growth rate is which constant growth rate I need that starting from 1056, taking this number every year, I will end up at 1725. So if this would be 2%, maybe then every year growing 2% should be then from 1050 to 1725. The other way around, this would also mean I can directly calculate from the last data point and the first data point. So this would mean then oops, is equal to 1725 divided by 1056. So this is then the overall growth factor over the whole period. And again, I have to take the root of the length of the period. So again, 1 over 2022 minus 2008. So the 14th root I have to take. Hopefully, again, it is the same number. I'm lucky. So this would be then the average growth factor per year, but I want to have the average growth rate, and then I redo what I have done at first. Growth factor minus 1 is the growth rate. So the real average growth rate is growth factor minus 1, and let's take this also in percentage. Okay, this was the first period I should look at, and then also I should choose the period from 2009 to 2019. Let's then calculate from 2009 to 2019. This would be then these, growth rates until this. Okay. And now I have to do everything in the same way as I have done it before. So calculating the growth factors. And now taking again the geometric mean, but now over the shorter period. Oops, this is the wrong one. I have to take the one where the growth factors here is geometric mean are these. Or the product of these numbers now to the power of 1 over now 2019 minus, now you have to be a little bit careful. You have, of course, only the growth rate of 2010 since we are starting at 2009, but the period length is down to 2009. Yeah. Here we are, or now the end and the starting value. So, oops, is then the number 1386 over the starting point, roughly 1000. Oops, and again up to the power of 1 over 2019 minus 2009 and average growth rate is then a little bit less. Okay. Then I do not want to have later on an upload of the Excel files because there will be around 120 guys writing this exam. I cannot click on in every Excel file. So you shall then provide me an overall PDF file of your little term paper. And then if you have done this in Excel, you can just copy what you have done, and then maybe it looks later on like this. Oops, this hasn't functioned. Copying. So, and of course, I want to know what you have done. Right now, I don't see it. I see only the data. So maybe it's quite okay because every calculation is totally right. This would be quite nice because then I have a look at it and I see, okay, all the numbers are right, and it is very, very improbable that every result is right and your calculation is wrong. Of course, this could be the case, but it is very improbable. But of course, maybe you have made a little mistake that you have chosen the wrong period. And then you have there different numbers. And for this, I have, in a minute, for this, I have to know what you have done. And therefore, then I want that you write in your term paper what you have done, just a little points, so I can understand what you have done. For example, what is the formula for this? Yeah. And there, for example, you can write down here, well, how did I obtain this 5.3%? That this one was 1,831 minus 1,056,656 over 1,056,5656. Or in general, you can write down me the GDP of 2009 minus GDP of 2008 over GDP of 2008. And of course, you do not have to do it for every number here. I just have to see, well, what have you done in this column? And this one is then, for example, 1 plus the growth rate. Or write down is 1 minus 5.3% in a minute. Yeah. So then I know, okay, I know what you have done in this column, what you have done in this column. Then, for example, how did you obtain this average growth factor? And there you can give me also the formula. You can then write down here, okay, this is the product I of starting at 2009, growth rate of I until 2022, brackets to the power of 1 over 2022 minus 2008. Or you can also write down, as I did it, the other possibility to calculate it last data point over first data point and the 14th root. So that this is also 1725 over 1056 to the power of 1 over 14. Yeah. And then, for example, maybe you have chosen the wrong period. You have not divided by 14, but by 13. But then I see, okay, the number is maybe wrong, but you have made only a little mistake. then I still see, okay, you know more or less what you have done. And let's say this calculation is 6 points and you have made only a little mistake, and I can really see because you provide me with some annotations what you have done, that in general you have understood what you have to do, and there is only a little mistake. Well, this can always happen. And then you get still lots of points. But if you are, if you mean just copy and paste, and maybe every number is wrong, but what you have done is principally right, because there's only at some part, maybe in the beginning, you have made a little mistake in your formulas. And then this mistake will feed until the end. Then supposed to be everything is wrong. And if I don't know what you have done, then it's hard for me to give you any point. Okay? So please be careful about this, that, yeah, give me some hints, some annotations that in general I know what you do. And what is also important, that you know what kind of data are you providing. Yeah? So write it down. This is nominal GDP, current prices measured in US dollars. Okay? Mm-hmm. Yes, for sure. Yeah, for sure, for sure. But I would also recommend that you start, you have 5, 6 days, I think, for your term paper, that you start, to learn, not only doing annotations in the handwriting, because think of an presentation to your manager. Would you then provide a PowerPoint presentation with many handwriting annotations? I doubt this. For me, it's okay. Yeah? But maybe you can choose this little term paper also to provide it in a proper manner. But for me, I want to see that you know what you are doing and that hopefully the results are okay. You can make these annotations by hand. Hopefully your handwriting is then better than mine, so I can read it. Yeah. Well, actually, if you since you have asked, I am doing this kind of exams now for I think 3 semesters, and I really got many term papers or many exams handed in where the students wrote down by hand the full data. Yeah. Think of this, 15 years, 2, 3, 4 time series. Well, then you are writing one day. And this was really a surprise for me because I said, yeah, of course you can copy and paste it. And this was about, I think, 10, 15% of the students wrote down whole time series about, of 10, 20 years by hand. And there I really thought, well, digital natives, okay. So maybe then the main task was how get I out the data from the internet to my PDF file. I didn't thought that I didn't think that this should be the main task here. I suppose that you are able to do this. You are in your around fourth, fifth semesters in your studies. Yeah, you should be able to use the software because it's helpful. Of course, you can also choose use artificial intelligence. With this, you right now can also manipulate data. But be careful, you have to know what you are doing, that you know what is the calculation behind it. Therefore, you have really to know what you are doing, that you just taking ChatGPT, having a short look at the output. Okay, this is reasonable. Then it's okay for me. Why not? Okay, and then, yeah, you should just interpret the difference here between these two numbers. And yeah, for Australia, I was for my own a little bit surprised because of the outcome of these numbers, because maybe you can think by your own. Why did I choose these different periods? One time starting from 2008 until 22, and then taking out the first part of this period and the last part of this period. And for this, I think or not, I think I know that I have talked a lot within this lecture, what has happened in this time at the beginning of the period and in the end of the period. What was of great economic relevance. Yeah. Yes, financial crisis. Yes, just before Corona. So in general, when I gave this task, then I thought, in general, not knowing what has happened in countries in Africa, in South America, or whatever, I thought, well, these were worldwide economic events. So, and within these two crises, we had a large downturn in general. So, what I then would expect is taking out, in general, these global downturns, that this would mean that the growth rate of this period would be a little bit larger than the whole period, including the two crises. Well, and now it would be nice. I, I suppose that for most of the countries, this argumentation would it be that you see this effect. And now for Australia, it's different. And then it would be nice that you, yeah, maybe just read a little bit or look at the data, that you find maybe an explanation. Why don't I see this general effect in the data for my specific country? Well, and then if we look here, especially, oops, let us take this away, that when we look at the nominal development, then we see here also some, yeah, very special data points. These two, for example, 2 years increase of the Australian economy of 20 and 25%. Well, an increase after the financial crisis, okay. But Australia is a highly developed country. One of the highest standards of living in the world. And then remember the lecture I provided you. For a developed country, we would expect a real growth of 1, 2, 3, maybe 4% in good times. Okay, here we are nominal data. So roughly we have to add inflation, price development, but also price development in a highly developed country. We would not in general expect an inflation rate of 20% or something like this. You know, the general aim of inflation worldwide in developed country is 2 or 3%. So then this would mean, yeah, maybe almost 10%. This would be reasonable. But roughly we would expect 4 or 5% of nominal growth. But here we have more than 20. And also, look at this number, a downturn of 15%. And then we can think, well, in 2015, was there a huge crisis in Australia? If you read, no. Well, and then maybe you come to the idea, well, we have it here that we are looking at US dollar. And what does this mean? This is not only current prices, but we have to multiply it with the exchange rate. So, and with this, all this information together, then maybe you have the idea, well, let's look what have done the exchange rate during this time. And this would be then this little research what I want to have you about your country. Not much, just a little bit. So let's say here exchange rate US dollar versus Australian dollar. So let's take the maximum period here. And this is then roughly here from 2006 to 2025. Well, and here is more or less the explanation. You see around 2009, 2010, this drastic spike. So these 20-25% are mainly due to the exchange rate or due to the changes of the exchange rate of Australian dollar versus US dollar. Also here, I think this we have also seen. Yeah, here 25, 21 plus 21 in 2021. Well, this was still Corona time. This would be really surprising, the growth in 2021. But we see here also this spike in the development of the exchange rate. And also now we can explain these minus 15 here, because here it is not that fast spike than the other, but also you see here from roughly 1 to 1.5, so an increase of 50%. So over 1 year. So this will be then also the explanation for this development. And then due to this general high volatility, but mainly driven by the exchange rate, we end up then by this quite unexpected result that the period of nominal growth without the two crises is lower than the average growth with the two crises. And this you can write down then within, I think, 2, 3, 4 sentences, and this is okay. Yeah. Maybe, well, maybe I think for the most other countries, you look at it and then you see from the development average growth rate with the two crises is maybe 2% and without is 3.5. Well, then it is, so to speak, then a little bit easier. Then you can write down, well, my explanation is since I have seen that there are, we have taken out the two crises, okay, then it's, you have it directly. I was, for my own, I was surprised when I looked at this data. Yeah. But it would be nice that I just see, okay, you have read a little bit about your country because I want to learn also something. I learn about 100 countries. I cannot read about 100 countries. Yeah. Okay. Then let's take the next one. Now we should have a look at real GDP growth, inflation rate, and later on we should calculate a GDP deflator. So let's download the inflation rate and the real GDP growth. Oops. Real GDP growth. Okay. Australia is already chosen. Download data. Here we are. Copy this data. And the inflation rate. Back to data sets. Inflation rate, average consumer price. In the task, I also provided you which inflation rate you should choose. Here you see average consumer prices. Yeah. Because here you have two possibilities. And please be careful that you also choose the right data. I want to have you I want to have from you within the task, because if you choose the wrong data set, then of course you get other numbers. So country Australia is also already chosen, and download data. Inflation rate. Please also check always that you have downloaded it, because sometimes you have within the cache of your browser something other things that you really got the right data. Oops. Area. Transpose and go into this we can cut. So this was task A. Let's go to task B. So which period? Starting from 2010 to 2019. Okay. So 2010 to 2019. So this is then the growth rate, GDP real, and be careful, 2.4 is then given in the unit percentage. And this you also have to provide to me. I have to know what kind of data is it. So also the unit percentage. And the, oops, where is it? Inflation rate of the same period. And this is inflation, also in percentage. So first task is to calculate the average growth rate. How can I do this? Maybe you can help me. Yes, so be careful what kind of data I have already. I have already the growth rates. In the first task, I, at the first step, had to calculate the growth rates. So now I can directly calculate the growth factors, okay? Oops, there, we do not know, need, oops. So how do I calculate now the growth factor of real GDP in 2010? What I have to do? The growth factor. Yeah, but this I would need if I have only the absolute values. Here I have already the growth rates, and the growth factor is just 1 plus the growth rate. Look at it here. Here, these are the absolute values, okay? So there I at first had to calculate the growth rate, but then 1 plus the growth rate is the growth factor. Now I already have this data here. But there's again a little, a little problem. What would we be? Would be now the growth factor 3.4, 1 plus 2.4. If I'm asking in this way, the answer is, of course, no. Because why? Well, the unit of my data is percentage. So I have to divide the 2.4 by 100. Yeah. Also think of if your GDP would be 2000. If it's growing by 2.4%, then it will be a little bit more than 2000. Actually 2004, 2048. But if I multiply 2000 with 3.1, I end up with 70,000, with 7,000. Yeah, so I really recommend, and this is, this is really, really important. Now we have longer time series. And then you also have to have an idea when you are doing your data manipulation, that you have an idea, well, in what range should be at the end my results. Somehow, for me, some explanation for the global financial crisis is that there were sitting around in the whole world many guys in the insurance companies and the banks putting all these data into their Excel files, maybe feeding it in, thinking, well, it will be okay what the programmers had done. Pressing enter, there's coming a number out of this. They went to the rating agencies and said, wow, this is a great product. You should give me a AAA rating, best rating ever. This was done all over the world. The end was all these products, these products were no AAA products. Within this summer, 2007, 2008, billions of dollars of these products were downgraded from AAA to C, to rubbish. Nothing worse anymore. And in my point of view, I think that there were sitting many, many people who didn't know, feeding in data, looking at the output and thinking about the output. Well, can this be true? And this kind of exam is also that you somehow learn to deal with data. Yeah. 1 plus 2.4 over 100. Yeah, of course, this would be only a little mistake if you calculate here 1 plus 2.4 is 3.4. Yeah. But for me, this is a larger mistake because then I would say, well, dividing by 13 and not by 14 is okay. This can happen that you have chosen the whole period. But missing the 100 here, this in my mind would then mean, has this guy really understood what a growth factor is? Or please don't mind, but if you have said, well, I think you wanted to calculate the change of the growth rates. Yeah. But this is not the task here. Yeah. Then I also say, well, you should average the growth rates. You shall not calculate the change of the growth rates. Yeah. So be careful that you think, what do I have to do? Okay. So then here we have also the growth factors for the inflation rate. And now I will only choose one possibility. So the geometric mean of these growth factors would be the average growth factor and 1 minus the growth factor, minus 1, sorry, this way around is then the average growth rate. And let's take this also in percentage. So this is the first thing, and now comes maybe the harder part, because now using the data from task A, also determine the annual average rate of change of the GDP deflator. And then you shall compare the average rate of change of the GDP deflator with the average inflation rate. And in order to do this, you have to know what is the GDP deflator. So here we need GDP deflator, and the GDP deflator is defined as index of nominal GDP over the index of real GDP, and since it is an index, we multiply it by 100 just because we want to have the index number in the neighborhood of 100. Yeah, this you find in the lecture. So what do we need then? Well, these are growth rates, and now comes your point. Since we have the first growth rate or the growth rate in 2010, the starting point for our absolute values is 2009. Okay? So therefore, I start here at 2009. Here, then I want to have the GDP deflator. For the GDP deflator, I have to have the real GDP and the nominal GDP. And we need the indices, index and the index. So, and then remember, we are free when we use the representation of an index at which year we set the index to 100. Well, quite a good idea then would be to choose the index number at the starting year to 100. But it doesn't matter. You can also choose 2015. It doesn't change anything in your calculation. Yeah. So I set this to 100. I set this to 100. And then using the formula, well, now it's really simple. Nominal GDP over real GDP times 100 is 100 over 100 times 100 is of course 100. But over the years, nominal GDP and real GDP are developing. In 2010, 2011, and so on, the numbers are not anymore 100. And therefore, I, not writing down 100, I type in here the formula. So nominal GDP over real GDP times 100 would be GDP deflator. This plus 1. And we want to go down to 2019. Well, now what is the index of real GDP starting in 2009 at 100 in the year 2010? Since we know that the real growth rate is 2.4%. What number will occur here? Hmm? If 100 is growing over 1 year by 2.4%, I think this you can do in your head, or yeah, yeah, 102.4. Or in general, this 100 times the growth factor. Yeah. And this then I can just copy downward. Yeah. So clicking in it here, you see it is starting from the former year 111 times the growth factor in 2014, 1.026. So now we need the nominal. And for the nominal, I should that you will just take your results from the task 1. And in task 1, here we have the nominal growth rates from 2009 to 22. And there, then we just need the growth rate from 2010 to 2009. Oh, the growth factors we should use to 2019. So done. And this would be the growth factors of GDP nominal. And then we have to make the same calculation as for the real GDP. So this one would be then 100 times 1.25. Going downward, we have now the development of both indices. And then here we have already chosen the formula, nominal GDP over real GDP times 100. So I can downward copy this number. Now I need the growth rates of GDP deflator. This is again 2010 minus 2009 over the starting value 2009. This we have done 4 times already. Yeah. These are the growth rates and the growth factors 1 plus the growth rates. Is 1 plus, oh, minus, plus, and the average is again the geometric mean. And this we have done already here for inflation and for real. So since I have done all this in the same format, there you have to be a little bit careful if you only copy this. You can also, of course, retype it by hand. But I provide now all my columns in the same way. And then, of course, since I have done all these calculations already, technically in the same way, I can just copy and paste it to the right. And this would be then my result for the average growth of the GDP deflator. Yeah. But I would really recommend, if you are doing this copy and pasting, then also, of course, you have to roughly know what would be a reasonable result. Because maybe there at some column somewhere is something different. This happens quite fast. Yeah. And let's suppose you would see here a number where you see 128. But then you directly see, oh, shit, something has to be wrong in my formula. This is not a reasonable result. And then there will be some mistake. Yeah. And this is exam is also that you start to do this. Of course, you have 5 days for this, and you can also do all these calculations typing it in your pocket calculator. This will take some time more. But humanity has developed. We have even now artificial intelligence. What is actually also possible, I haven't tried it right now, but I really think that it is possible using the right specific prompts. You can now use artificial intelligence for all this, and you will get the right answer. But you have to be really careful. And maybe this also, maybe try to start this. In the next years, you have to use it. You will be measured in your possibility to use artificial intelligence later on in the labor market. Yeah. But for the exam, I would say, well, don't try it at the first, at a starting point, because I think you are not really practiced using artificial intelligence in a very deep way right now. But use it maybe to start to do it. Yeah. If in the end you have a reasonable result, then it would be maybe a good idea to recheck yourself using for one little step artificial intelligence. And then I would say, if you obtain the same result using artificial intelligence, you could be quite sure that your result is also right. Yeah, because then it's a double check. Okay, so then let's copy this also. This would be then task B. Yeah, and here I also want some annotations. Formula, formula, formula. No, this is the data. And especially here, all this was a little bit more complicated. Formulas. Yeah. Let's say, oh, I missed something. This I didn't want to see from you. Let's go back. This is also good that this has happened. Because you see here, now I don't know what is the data because I missed the first row here. Well, of course, I can now retype it by hand, but it will be nicer if I directly copy this here. So let's take the whole table. There it is. And now what do we need? Here. And especially I would say this one, the formulas. Yeah. And especially what we need is, again, GDP. Deflator is GDP nominal over GDP real. And here also, this would be then, for example, 107 over 100 to the power of 1 over 10, because 2019 minus 2009. Yeah, and then especially you should compare these two numbers. Well, and for this, then I want that you maybe look it up in your lectures slides, or you already know it. Well, inflation rate, this was measured via this um, consumer basket, average consumer basket. So it focuses on the sector of the private households. Private consumption is roughly 60%, 50, 60% of overall GDP, while the GDP deflator represents the whole economy, 100%. And therefore, then I'm not surprised that these numbers differs. And then you can make maybe some statement, well, we see here inflation rate is a little bit higher. Then we can, so to speak, deduce from this that's supposed to be the price increase of the investment goods, especially because these are in general no consumption goods, are not that fast than the consumer prices. Yeah, or that the whole price development in the whole economy is much slower than for the consumption sector. So also 1, 2, 3 sentences. This is enough. Okay. Oh, only 5 minutes. Sorry. Then let's do the last one. Taking account population development from 2008 to 2023. We want now, well, we know already within this period we have real growth. But now we want to see, well, is it also a growth per capita? For this, then let's download the population data. Here we have it. Australia, we have already downloaded. And copy this into my data set. And from 2008, oops, another task. Task C. Up, up. 2008 to 2023. Where is it? There we are. Task. So this is the population in millions. And of course, what is the task now? We want to calculate the growth of the number of inhabitants. So again, let's calculate the growth rate equals absolute change during the divided by the former value, and the growth factor is 1 plus the growth rate, taking the geometric mean, and the average growth rate is then the growth factor minus 1, again in percent, maybe 2 digits. So over this time, we have a population growth of 1.5%. So of course, then we also need the population, the real growth. This was in, no, here we have not the long enough period. So we need, where is it? Real growth rates. Now we are starting with the absolute number in 2008. So we have to start with the growth rates at 2009 until 23. This would be the growth rate, GDP real. Again, the growth factor, be careful, it's given in percentage, so dividing by 100 again. This I should provide here also. And since it is formatted in the same way, I can do it like this. And then I have here roughly 2.5 average growth over this period. And this I should shortly interpret. Let's put it here. Task C. This is my population growth. Real economic growth. And this is less than the economic growth. And then I can conclude that I have an overall increase of real GDP per capita. This means we have an increase of real GDP per capita over the period from 2008 to 2023. Point landing 10, 11:45. So that's it. Yeah. I think you see it is not that hard to do it, but you have to be careful. Yeah. Please do not think, well, I do this within 1 hour. Yeah. So I need it now, and I think I know what I'm doing. I needed 1.5 hours. So maybe take it a first step one afternoon, then sleep over it, and take your results at the next day, and at the next day. Yeah. So this will be one part, that you get your data for one specific country. Then the GDP or BIP task we will do the next week. There we will do a specific calculation similar as we have done it already in the lecture. And about this, you will also get a task in your exam. And then you will get also, I think, one or two more theoretical tasks. We have already went through the whole calculations within the ISLM model. Maybe I give you a calculation about the ASID model or the neoclassical model. But we will do also examples next week. Yeah? Okay, then that's it.